You've had kind of like a harder couple of months. How did you get yourself back on track?
It was a complete nuclear meltdown. The panic attacks that I've been ignoring got louder and noisier, and suddenly I couldn't go to work anymore. I was having panic attacks literally like 20 minutes before the radio show. Radio has always been like this space for me where I come alive there. I actually didn't know how I'll ever get back to being the guy I was. It really was terrifying.
It's always nice to talk to somebody who's got something to say, and Christian O'Connell's certainly one of them.
A top-rated radio host and comedian in the UK for decades.
Panic attacks forced him to confront everything.
He walked away from the height of his career and moved to Australia.
Christian's show on Gold FM is now #1 in Australia.
Why did you want to work in that field?
In the short term, didn't go very well, and there was a big backlash. Someone did actually say one day to my daughter on the playground, "No one listens to your dad's radio show." A year and a half later, after getting here, the show went to #1.
Just because one person or even two or three say something doesn't mean it's true. Imagine you just gone, okay, I'm not going to make it in Australia, and you've got the #1 show here.
You're probably like me, I'm guessing, Sarah, that you have an open note on your phone where you collect quotes and poems.
Sometimes
Always.
I don't even know what they are.
No,
I've just written all these random lines.
Yes. I worked so hard to get there. I had the nice house. First time in my life, I had a kitchen island. This is when you make it life, when you got a kitchen island. I bring my mum round and went, look at this. What's made it?
We get stressed out and the hustle culture, and we find that we're very far away from that centre point.
There's no training for this. What do you want to do with the rest of your life?
We have Christian O'Connell on, who I'm so excited to interview, and you just mentioned my moleskin notepad. And the thing with me, and I'd love to know what you do, is I very much do a lot of research before interviews. It's my style. I like to know the person inside and out, right? So my normal notepad, I left it at work.
Good.
And so then I went on to another podcast promoting my book, and they gave me this whole goodies bag, one that had this amazing notepad. And I just said to you, you don't get anything when you leave here. Unfortunately, we don't give away goodie bags.
Actually, I already feel the gift of just being here with you in this space.
That is so nice.
It's already gifting me more than a mere book.
Thank you. Do you give any gifts at the end of your show to guests?
My show is a gift.
Yes.
Every single day. And for 27 years, I'm constantly giving.
Yes, That's wonderful. Tell me, Christian, how did you get into radio, and why did you want to work in that field?
I think for me, I was very lucky, actually, as a teenager. And these days, the P word, purpose, is everywhere. It's and when I was growing up, that word, it's like that word hadn't been invented. You know, no one really thought. My dad worked in a factory. My mum was a nurse for 44 years. They just had jobs. It's not like they found their purpose. And these days, there's just so much. I've got two daughters who are 18 and almost 21. And it's burning them out, worrying about what is my purpose in life. Like, we're just here to do one thing for the rest of our lives. I don't think that's what purpose is. But when I was a teenager, I was lit up by this radio DJ called Steve Wright in the UK. And there'd never been a radio DJ like him in the UK. He was incredibly innovative. He was very funny, very, very real. And he was really warm, and he was sarcastic and enthusiastic. I'd never heard radio like that before. I was 13. It was actually like in my little bedroom in this tiny house we lived in. It was like a lightning bolt came into that bedroom. And the thing about his show was, it was like a connective tissue. Everyone at school, you need to talk about what happened with Steve Wright in the afternoon the previous day.
Really?
It was it was very big. And so I look back now and I can realise that I was obviously looking at that connection, what it gave people, what it did me at a tough time in my life. It just lit me up. It made me feel a bit less alone. It made me laugh in the loneliness of my bedroom. And Mum and Dad were never there in the afternoon when I came back from school. It was just me and my sister. So it was actually quite a lonely place in the afternoon at home. And so suddenly this bedroom was lit up with his energy and laughter. And it all came from just one guy with his team on the radio. And he was radiating and transmitting something more than a radio show. And he had this posse. He kind of changed how radio was done in the UK, that it wasn't just him. His producers would be on air, and obviously that star's been ripped off around the world now. And Steve, who I got to know as a friend over the years, admitted that he'd stole it as well from Rick Dees in America. But that star was brand new in the UK, and he really made it work, and it made it feel like that was the best job in the world to do, what he was doing and being on that team. And so I used to think about it constantly, like, whatever that was, I need to try and get as close to that as I can. And mine isn't the normal path. It's quite a sort of strange, windy one.
Have you heard of the saying, you can't be what you can't see?
No.
Yeah, so there's a beautiful saying, you can't be what you can't see. Someone needs to illuminate that path for you.
Yeah,
and that's like a beautiful example of that.
Yeah, I guess so.
So it's not that you copy that person. It's that you see it. Like for me, I had funny, people always laugh when I say this, like Oprah and Liz Hayes. Liz Hayes, a very well-renowned journalist here in Australia.
Yeah, she's
and
amazing.
I used to look at both of them and think like, wow, like they are so inspiring.
But what did they light up in you though?
It's like I used to love that they were getting to the truth of things.
Right, okay.
Right?
And that's important to you. Is like
that to
getting
me
the heart
was
of something.
so important.
Yeah.
They were having these in-depth conversations. They were really getting the truth out of people, but doing it in a way that had a lot of integrity, right? Because you see a lot of journalists or people that interview people and they can be very harsh and cruel. And I thought, I like what they do because they have a bond with whoever it is they're interviewing, or they form something within the interview with them.
Yeah.
And they're able to help them tell their story in a way that allows the person that's watching or listening to know more and help them in their life, but they also walk away with their integrity. And I love that. And with Oprah especially, I loved how she really opened up the spiritual path for people. So it was so taboo and, you know, the word that I hate is like pseudoscience, that kind of genre of like, no, what is that? She really, before any of this personal development work was mainstream, she really took that leap. And I remember hearing people thought she was mad, right? Because they had religion, but they didn't really have this.
No.
And it was hippie and, you know, people that did follow spirituality, they were just classified, as that kind of hippie loving crystal person. And she brought it into the mainstream and she did it with a lot of smarts about her. And look at it now. It's like one of the biggest areas. I mean, you go into any bookshop and personal development is, you know, one of the biggest areas that sell.
Well, it is. I think it's huge, isn't it? It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I think what I would say about the personal development to me, and I've read all those books, and they've helped to some extent in some small way, but I think now, like, the pendulum's gone too far. I think it's exhausting. The word self-development actually to me means if you get there, you'll be happy. And I don't think that really helps. I think a lot of people read all those books, they don't make any lasting, impactful changes. Otherwise, why are more books being written every single year?
Yeah.
It's not actually working. I think it's self-defeating. I think it goes against the natural grain of how people do actually evolve and change of their own accord. I think it's more about an unfolding. I think it's more about self-discovery. Self-development means there's something you're saying. If I'm reading a book about self-development, it means I need to develop some part of it because I'm flawed. And that's why I think there's a part of you that resists that doesn't believe that actually that is true. You might be in the way of yourself at the moment. You might be stuck. But most people who are stuck, and I'm talking about myself here, actually what I have been when I have been stuck, and I was stuck the last couple of weeks and last couple of months this year, I was more disconnected to something. And I think it's more about a returning and an allowing sometimes and an unfolding more than a having to develop. I think that thought is exhausting. You're not good enough. If you develop, maybe then happiness. When it's like, bloody hell, that sounds like really hard work.
I think also guidance is key. Like I know in my work, how I help people as a mindset coach is, and you know, the premise of my new book is that everything you need is already inside of you. That was
that's
my
great.
whole
So I'm
thing,
talking to you. That's
right?
great, Sarah.
Exactly what
Yes.
you're saying.
Yeah.
And I always give the analogy of the Wizard of Oz, right?
Yes,
They're all
it's
after
one of my
these
favourite stories and
Yeah,
films, yes.
same. So, you know, that's the first thing I tell people is it was one of my favourite films when I was
Yeah.
like 4 and it made me want to be an actress. Anyway, clearly went down a different path. But when I got older and really understood what that film meant, it was that, you know, Dorothy and the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Lion, they're all looking for things outside of them, for courage, for a heart, for brains, Dorothy to go home. And what they find at the end is everything they needed was
beautiful, isn't it?
already
There's no place
inside
like
of them.
home. What a great message.
It's so beautiful. And with the wizard as well, he acts like he's the all-powerful, mighty thing. And when they meet him, they realize he's this little nothing. And again, it's the idea that you are the most powerful, almighty thing. No one outside of you is. And, you know, I think we're exactly talking the same language. So it's about reconnecting with what we already have, that innate, you know, knowing within us, which sometimes because of the noise of the world gets disconnected, you know, and we get stressed out and the hustle culture and it can be very overwhelmed. And then we find that we're very far away from, you know, that center point. How did you just mentioned that you've had kind of like a harder couple of months. What happened and how did you get yourself back on track?
Great question. My youngest daughter left home. So suddenly you build up your whole life around these beautiful girls. I've been blessed with two daughters. And, we're a very close family. We've been through a lot. We moved to Australia, obviously. I think it's actually 2 weeks away when we're recording this from 7 years since we arrived here. So to take your daughter to the side of the world and uproot them from their friends and girls of that age, they were sort of pre-teens. It's really hard to form new relationships when you're teenage girls and you're in a different country. And then factor in that your dad is doing this radio show that actually in the short term didn't go very well and there was a big backlash. And so, and someone did actually say one day to my daughter on the playground, your dad's radio show, no one listens to your dad's radio show, which I thought if I actually survived this, I'm going to write a book about that. And I did.
And you did.
I did. That kid gave a great line. I thought that was hilarious.
I was so cool.
I was crushed. My daughter thought it was funny. It is funny, but I remember at the time
in hindsight, it is actually funny.
How bad it is. I'm getting abuse from listeners, and now I'm getting abuse from a 13-year-old Australian girl at a playground. This actually I can't cope with anymore. But anyway, so we've all been through a lot. And then when obviously we had COVID, just when we were like settling down. So we've been through a lot. And when I just didn't realise, I don't think my wife and I did, empty nest is the most depressing phrase or image.
It's
that doesn't help. Who wants to think about an empty nest? What's in that empty nest? Nothing. And then I just fall into it and die. And it was like, I'm 52 and it was like, I knew it was coming. It's coming. Then suddenly it comes, like, there's no training for this, And so I found it really... I found it like, gosh, it's this strange invitation to actually get all this time all of a sudden back at you and that I haven't had for 20 odd years of being a dad. And actually, it's actually quite frightening. And this is it. In it, there's this kind of, they give you back this gift of time and what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And so that actually is a really terrifying question when you think, I know where I am in the arc of my life, roughly. I don't know when it ends, but I kind of know I'm in the second half. That much I know, right? And this second half, it isn't when all the great stuff starts to happen. It's medical problems, you lose people, there's a lot of grief. And so it's like trying to understand, okay, how do I embrace that? And there's no, all you hear is, oh, you empty nesters, oh, you empty nesters. Like, that isn't helping. Stop talking about the empty nest. It's a thriving nest. There's so much in there. I can't name it right now, but we need better imagery of it. And so genuinely trying to actually kind of navigate through that has actually been really challenged, but also really, it's actually been quite beautiful, actually.
Have you reconnected with your wife a bit more?
Yes, but last year I was really worried about how she was going to cope, right? Because in the morning, she's been the person. I've only ever done breakfast radio, Sarah, for 27 years. I've never really been there in the morning. That's been a lot of her life, is like getting those girls out of bed, off to school. And then suddenly that not being there was going to create a big void. And so I spent a lot of time last year saying to her, we need to have something in that's new for you, that you put in some new seeds, because otherwise that's going to be, my morning routine stays the same. I still have the team and the radio show. And so, she started in February. She's gone back to university. She's doing an MA in art therapy.
Oh, wow.
She's got this completely different thing. Never done anything like that before.
Amazing.
So I don't see much of her now. She's at college a couple of days a week. Then when she comes home, she's doing essays. I've now got, I share my life with 3 women who are all at university studying. I'm the only one with a job. And so I'm now the one going, hang on a minute, I never thought about what I'm going to do with this. I come into an empty house and it was quite intimidating to know, actually, what do you want to do? It's like putting the attention back on yourself. And so it's like no other chapter in my life, obviously, that I've ever been through before, actually. And so, it's, all the stuff you think you've worked on, you've developed, all that gets kicked away from you. You're like, God damn it. I thought I was really kind of spiritually aware. This is really, really hard.
I feel like that's what happens in life, though. We continuously evolve and we're given situations that make us evolve, right?
Yes.
So it's like we're not comfortable for too long until something else happens and you're like, you know, then you sit with that, learn how to move through it. And then you're all right for a while. Something else hits you.
Yeah, it is constantly like snakes and ladders.
Yeah.
Isn't it, in life? Just
it
when you think
honestly
you're getting
is.
somewhere and you're like...
You said that your parents weren't there much. Were they working?
They were working class. They both had proper jobs, you know, and so they just did what every other mum and dad did. They worked. And so it wasn't like they weren't there so much like I was abandoned. They had jobs. I remember I've been to every single one of my daughter's sports days. And they laugh when I said, my dad never came to a single one. If you saw
my
a dad
dad
in the
never
80s,
came
right,
to
it would be
anything
odd.
I did
You would
ever.
think they were an alcoholic or they're unemployed. You'd be like, what's your dad doing here? Right? It'd be really odd.
It's
Whereas
true.
now it's a big thing like, have you heard her dad wasn't even there?
Yeah.
She'd been in therapy for years.
Oh my God, I've never thought about that
Yeah.
before, because my daughter got upset once because we couldn't come to something. And
Oh, they
I
go
said,
berserk.
Yeah,
They don't
and
realise
I
how
was
lucky
like,
they are.
my
I'm
dad.
at everything.
I was like, Popper, which she calls my dad.
Yeah.
I was like, he came to nothing of
Yeah,
mine.
no,
I was
nothing.
in all the plays doing
Yeah.
all the acting. There was my mum, never my dad.
Yeah. Yeah, always like
Yeah.
that. Yes.
So thus is life,
Yes.
resilience.
Yes. So no, it's not like they didn't care. It's just that they cared about putting food on the table.
Yeah.
They were working. They were just tired. And so, yeah, but one thing I did get from my parents, and I know having interviewed a lot of comedians and knowing a lot of comedians, is that one thing that I think working class backgrounds and families really value is the importance of laughter. And I think about it because it's abundant. It doesn't cost you anything to know how to tell a funny story. And in my family, my mum and dad, one thing they did give me a lot of, they made me feel that I was very funny. And they still do. I went back to England and I hadn't seen them for 2 years. And no one laughs harder than my mum and dad at me. And so as a kid, I learned from them that they love to laugh. And so I just wanted to do more and more of that. So they like this great test lab in a way of me constantly trying to, my goal as a kid was just to always just tell a funny story. But the great thing is if you were telling a story at the dinner table and it went off and it was slow and that, my dad would go, boring, where's this going? And so you had this kind of
Wow.
like, get on with it. You better get into it and do the story. And so actually it was kind of a good skill. And the one thing I love about my daughters and my wife is like dinner tables where we're at home right about, it's lively. There's a lot of banter there and they've been raised in a family where we really value jokes and storytelling. It's a lovely thing to have.
There's
in the world.
nothing better than laughter.
No.
It's the best
So the best
medicine
coping
anyway.
mechanism. Life's hard.
Yeah.
Like we were just saying. And so I think actually what's scary is when things are really hard, when you suddenly feel like there's no laughter, then it feels like to me,
Yes.
God, oh, this is really bad. And I remember last year, my mother-in-law died suddenly. It was very dramatic and obviously very upsetting. I remember my eldest daughter, she was 19. She just turned 20 and she said, how long do you think it'll be before we ever laugh again? It's going to be a long time. I went, we will be laughing sooner than you imagine, darling. It's never that far away.
Yeah.
But right now it feels like that. But I remember going away from her about 10 minutes ago going, what a profound observation for a 20-year-old to know that this is actually really
Absolutely.
serious. There's nothing funny happening right now. There was again, shortly. No, it didn't take that long. But yeah, I think laughter is oh my God, what
It's
a
an
great
interesting thing because my girlfriend, my best friend and I, we'll talk, if anything bad happens, she'll be like, this happened at work or whatever. And I'm the same. And she'll always say, we'll put that in the laughter box, Sarah. In a month, we'll be laughing about
There's
it.
a title of your
and
next
honestly,
book. Make a podcast, The Laughter Box.
it is so,
I
we
listen.
reminisce.
Subscribe straight away. You got your first cigar. The Laughter Box.
We
It's
reminisce
great
about the
phrase.
stupidest
It's better than
stuff.
the Hurt Locker. The Laughter Box. We've all got Hurt Lockers. You also need a Laughter Box.
I will never forget this absurd meeting I was in. I can't go into the ins and outs, but basically, when you sit in those meetings and you think, am I in another stratosphere here? Like,
Yeah,
what is
that
coming?
happens a lot in our
Yeah,
industry.
yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And these executives are talking to me and I'm thinking, what
Yeah, you're
is-
both in the experience and looking at it going, it's like adults pretending to be adults. And like, what? Are you even aware of what you're saying?
Yes.
They're taking it all way too seriously for something which actually is quite inane.
Yes,
You know,
it was
you're
the
like,
exact thing.
"Come
You're
on.
vibing me.
We're not saving lives here. The way you're carrying us, we're at the forefront of science about some bullshit project that no one's probably going to care about that anyway. And they're like, we've got to do this. We've got to look at the projected, and eyeballs. We need eyeballs. We need dollars on this. Like,
It's
what are you even
100%
talking
the
about?
meeting I was in. And I remember thinking, what on
Yeah.
earth is
Yeah.
going through your
never lose that.
fucking
It's a
mouth
very,
now?
Very healthy way, yeah. It's sometimes really hard because I think always in my life I'm slightly in the experience and slightly outside
Yes,
of it.
yes.
And it can be quite disconnecting at times, but it's also a great coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Because it's sometimes, especially been in this kind of industry for a very long time, it does chew you up and spit you out.
Yeah.
It's cyclical.
Totally.
And you always have to know it doesn't owe you anything. It doesn't care about your dreams. It really doesn't care about your purpose. And so you always have to be slightly aware that you're in a relationship, a long-term, with a really dysfunctional partner. You keep going, maybe they're change. Oh, I'm the problem.
It's 100%
Yes,
true.
it is.
And you just smile and nod, and in your
Yeah.
mind you're thinking,
Yeah.
you're insane.
Yeah. I'm lucky with my wife because often when I'm like up in my own head and I get caught with the BS up with it all, and in the evening sometimes I go, this happened, and this other radio station is saying this right now, and the jingles. She go, and that is enough. And I go, yeah, you're quite right. Okay. And then we go, yeah, what should we talk about that's actually more interesting?
And it's only people in radio. I don't know if TV people have it the same, where it's
Because
just
they work in a really boring industry.
yeah, it's true.
If you free-to-air TV these days, like looking in a time machine. 2 years ago, I spent 2 or 3 months auditioning for this game show, right? And they offered it to me, and I remember just my wife burst into tears. I said to her, "Why are you crying?" She goes, "I just don't want to lose you." She goes, "Do you ever want to be a game show host?" And I was like, "No, actually, I don't." She goes, "I had to ring my agent." And went, "It's a no." And he was like, "What? What? You're going to be on TV like X night? The salary is so." I went, I don't want to be a game show host.
Is that the worst
My
thing?
purpose in life is to help people tip coins. That's what I'm here to do. That's why I'm on this planet.
It's like those people my mum does who watches afternoon TV.
Yeah,
You know, and those like
Don't I think I'm on the empty nesters? Oh, Columbo's on. That's the highlight of my day. Oh, tipping point. Great.
I don't even know what the shows are, but you know when they're deal and no deal,
No, they're
or
all
like
like
yeah.
that. Yeah, they're all that, aren't they?
What was the game show that you?
I can't. No, you're dangerously close. The other one was, this happened about 15 years ago. I was down to the final 2 for, it's a massive TV show in the UK. It gets like 12 million people watching it every Saturday.
Yeah.
It's You've Been Framed. It's, funny home videos from around the world. And suddenly I was like swept up in this thing. Like, oh my God, if I get this, that salary's going to mean this. And then people are going to take me seriously. I'm going to be on one of the biggest TV shows in the country. And I remember going, this is so embarrassing. I remember going to this Porsche garage, picking out the Porsche I was going to get, right? I'll be back. I'm this close. I'm back in 2 weeks' time, and I'm going to buy it. They're going to call me. The network are going to call me. And I remember I didn't get it. And I got the phone, and I remember laughing hysterically. It was like a rare moment went off, an epiphany. I just went, thank fuck. And I remember 6 months later tuning in to watch the first episode, the guy they went with, and he looked dead behind the eyes. And I thought, that could have been me. I never got that Porsche. For weeks after, this guy went, "Hey, Christian, when you come back to get the Porsche," I just never called him back.
Don't you find like the Grant Denyer and stuff of the world? He's a lovely person, but they all like move over to like drugs or alcohol or something like that.
It's I remember going on a cookery show, and it was one where the host was doing like 4 episodes, 3 or 4 days a week, and I went on as a guest. And as I turned up, I've interviewed this chef many times. I didn't realize he smoked, and he was literally round the back. And I went, "Oh my God, I didn't know you smoked." Oh God, Christian, I didn't see you there. He goes, "Listen, don't ever do one of these shows. They take your soul." And he goes, "I never smoked until I started doing daytime TV." And then anyway, half an hour later, he's there like, "Hey, hello, Britain, welcome." And in this corner and that corner, I was just like, wow.
Oh my God, that is absolutely hilarious. So tell me, why did you had this huge show in the UK, why did you decide to come to Australia? Because your show, it was number 1, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was very lucky. I built that show up, and it was national around the UK. It was a breakfast show, and it was everything I'd always dreamt of having, which was a national radio show for people anywhere in the country. And we had 2.5 million listeners, and for many years it was incredible. But the path to getting there, it felt like that was where all the joy was. And it's suddenly your path in your life, and it sounds very entitled, but I suddenly got to a place that I'd worked so hard to get there. And I had the nice house, and we went on nice holidays. For the first time in my life, I had a kitchen island. And I always thought, this is when you make it, like when you got a kitchen island.
It's the little things
I
in
remember
life.
bringing my mum round. I went, look at this. She goes, what's that? It's a kitchen island. You boys made it. You boys made it. and yeah, I just felt suddenly, I got to my mid-40s, and I felt like I was doing an impersonation of myself. And I started to feel anxiety. And at the time, didn't really know what that was. So I just decided to do what a lot of people do, is outwork it. And so I wrote children's books, I did stand-up tours, did comedy festivals. But then after a while, it's like the little warning signs, I guess, at Chernobyl. They start off as little like fire alarms doing, and you go, don't worry about that. And then but then suddenly you're in and actually it was for me. It was a complete nuclear meltdown. The panic attacks that I've been ignoring got louder and noisier, and thankfully they did. It actually changed my life. And suddenly I couldn't go to work anymore. I was having panic attacks literally like 20 minutes before the radio show, which felt really cruel to me because radio has always been like this space for me where I come alive there. I don't worry. I don't have the anxiety. I felt like fearless always on the radio. I always have done since I first walked into a radio studio. Now to suddenly have that potentially taken away from me, oh my God, it felt devastating. It was a death of joy in my life, security. It was also what gave my family financial independence. And so it really was terrifying. I actually didn't know how I'll ever get back to being the guy I was. And so my wife very gently said, I think you're having a midlife crisis. I didn't really know what they were other than the jokes everyone says about people my age having affairs or getting Harley Davidson. This felt like a very different thing. And she says, you need to go and get help. And I didn't even know then, how do you find a therapist?
Yeah.
Where do you get hold of one of these therapists? So I'm just like Googling therapists near me, and like some of them looked really miserable, and I don't really want to speak to someone like that. And then I found this guy who actually looked really grumpy, and I rang him, and he actually was. He was like, yep. And I was like, are you the therapist? And he was like, yep. And he was like, I just straight away liked this kind of like slightly grumpy guy. And so I said, look, I think I need some help. And he goes, well, do you think you need help? Straight away I was like, he's just asking a lot of questions. And I felt quite nervous, and I felt like I was over talking and trying to be funny. And that's when I realised I need help, actually. I'm trying to keep him away from whatever's going on inside. So I went to see this therapist. He was the perfect therapist for me. First thing was we didn't go in his house or in a place. He told me to meet him at the bottom of his garden where there was a shed. And it was quite a nice shed, but it was his shed. And had two armchairs in it.
That's odd.
Yeah, really odd. I was like, there's no certificates on the wall. Is he actually a therapist? I just found him online. Is he going to kill me? I didn't tell my wife where I am. And so I remember on the first session, I was like, he goes, you seem quite agitated. I went, yeah, I've got to be honest, I don't want to be here. And he goes, okay, why don't you want to be here? So I said, I think therapy is for people who've screwed up in life. And he sort of laughed and he said, well, why are you here? And I went, I've screwed up, I think. And I said something during the first session. I kept saying, I need you to get rid of it. I wasn't aware of it. Our language gives us away. I kept using the word it to talk about panic attacks. Oh, I don't know how to get rid of it. I need to get rid of it. He goes, the it is your problem. I go, what do you mean? He goes, what do you think it is? Show me your body where it is, and I'll cut it out now. And then I'll go around, I'll be a billionaire doing surgeries on people to cut out it that is anxiety. It's a part of you that's struggling right now. And I didn't really know what he meant about a part of me, but it started an 18-month, it wasn't just a therapy thing. I started seeing him twice a week, then it went down to once a week. It actually was a deep friendship as well. And it actually changed my life. And I remember within a couple of weeks, I was able to get back on the radio. I learnt breathwork and things and actual tactics that really did help and still do now. And then I remember going to see him 6 months later, and I went, Edison, Peter, I've got a bit of news, actually. We're thinking, actually, we might move to Australia. I remember he spat his coffee out. She was like, well, you don't need to prove anything now by that. You don't have to do that. He goes, do they even want you there? I went, I'm not really sure. I haven't got a job yet. He was like, he literally spat his coffee out, went all over his wooden shed walls. I went, I don't think you're meant to react that big to anything I say. I think you're meant to empower me. But I remember him trying to almost persuade me just to be really wary. He goes, it's like people who go into rehab and give up booze. They say, don't make any big decisions for the first 6 months. And I was going, I'm much better. I can get back on the radio. In fact, I'm going to go to the other side of the world with my kids and do radio there. But I think actually what it did do for me is it was a really violent kind of, what would I call it? A waking up.
Yes.
It was. We talk about awakening, and it's like you'll go and meditate for 8 hours, and then you're just awoke. And it certainly didn't work like that for me. It was a real fella. Someone broke in my house and shook me awake. But it was an awakening. I think I've been sleepwalking through my life for a bit, actually. And so it was a kind of like a very painful but a violent one. I guess that's what happens. It is a kind of normally crisis of the soul and stuff like that. I think they come physically when you don't listen to them, and I think your life is always trying to speak to you. It's just that you don't really slow down or create silence enough to actually really hear what your body and what your life is trying to say to you.
You mentioned breathing. I think it's the most unbelievable tool that we have. That's a whole chapter in my book, because I had the exact same thing where it was a little bit different in the sense that I would just start to get claustrophobic,
Right.
but in planes, right? And I had never had any sort of panic, and then the heart would start going at 100 miles
terrifying.
an hour, terrifying. And I'd be like, I need to want to get off this plane.
That's always the impulse,
right?
is to get away from
yeah,
whatever you think is
exactly.
causing it.
I
get it, Sarah.
need
It's
to
awful.
be outside.
Yes.
It was the idea that, which sounds absurd, that being on that plane, I can't get off when I want to.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
It's a lack of control.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I get it.
And I remember going to like a psychotherapist. No, it didn't really give me much help. Right. And then also I went to a hypnotist, nothing. And then someone said to me, why don't you use your breath? And I'm like thinking, what? Like, I've tried all these other things as if that's going to work.
It sounds really basic,
and they
doesn't
said
it?
box breathing. And so he taught me how to box breathe.
Yeah.
It was life-changing. Every time I get onto a plane now and I feel that that panicky in me, I start breathing. Even if I look like a bit of a look strange. Not that it's so obvious, but sometimes you probably could tell, just over and over. And the best bit about your breath, right? Firstly, it's our life force.
Yeah.
No one can take it away from us. It's the first thing we do when we come onto this world. We take a breath. The last thing we do when we leave. If we know how to use it properly, it is free, and it's there. Like that heart rate slows way down.
Yeah, to me, it's like a handbrake. I can get control again of my nervous system. And it isn't just for nervous system regulation for people who've had panic attacks. I also, I have to get up very early in the morning and I have to go and perform for 3 hours. And you won't be surprised to know that some mornings when I wake up at 4:15 in the morning, I don't really feel like that. And people say that dumb thing. I'm like, say, you're a morning person. No, that's just when I go to work, and that's just when I go to work. I don't really feel that funny. There are no comedy clubs at 6 a.m. for a reason. And so breathwork for me then, and it's not like I'm doing half an hour of it, but I do it every single morning, it's a way of actually supercharging my body with energy. So for me, it's not just about being able to regulate myself and calm myself and soothe myself. It's about actually bringing energy into my body to actually energize myself without caffeinating myself. Because caffeine and me don't go very well together. That can really spike my anxiety. So I have to watch that.
I think, you would know more than this, but those breakfast hours are grueling. I did it as a producer. When I was a producer many years ago, I did a year of breakfast radio
You said that like
show.
you're kind of recovering.
Well, I am.
Yeah.
It was literally...
People that know you sort of warned me. They went, I said, what's Sarah like? And they go, she used to be a breakfast show producer. Like someone like that, she used to have a drink problem. I was like, oh, poor thing. And then I obviously asked what period you were, and I was like, oh, wow, okay, I've heard about that. Okay.
You get it. We don't need to go into the
we
details.
don't need to go there.
We do not need
Put
to go
it
there.
in the laughter box.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, it is. And you know what? It was the
what a gift.
reason
Yes.
of my whole transformation, because I did breakfast radio, got completely burnt out, waking up at 3 a.m. And I also had a 2 and a 4-year-old,
Oh, wow.
so that was... That was a big
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Probably one of the biggest factors, right? In the sense that,
That's it. Blame your kids.
yeah, exactly.
That's what
They
the
were
next-
fine.
That's what your next book is about. Those bloody kids.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll give it the next Carl Sanderlands.
They, and you're on 24/7. It's not a show where you clock in, clock out. Oh, sorry, you can't call me anymore because it's time to go home. You're always on, right? Knowing what's happening in entertainment, sport, the news. And I remember picking up them from creche and kinder and looking at my phone constantly. And on the weekends, it's
that's
the same.
awful.
It was awful.
Yeah.
It was really awful. Some people are
horrendous.
brilliant at it. I wasn't. And it was that dark night of the soul.
And also, I don't think actually it's interesting. This we'll talk about this another time. But the fact that you felt like you had to be on 24/7, I wouldn't want. If you ask my team,
Yeah.
I don't expect them to be on 24/7. I don't want them to be on 24/7. It doesn't require that. I
Yeah.
think there's a tyrannical way that actually a lot of producers are treated that way by lousy middle management.
Yeah.
And they manage through that way of old-fashioned way of fear.
Yes.
That is why you felt like that.
I
No wonder-
agree.
Thank God it did burn you out. And it's burnt out a lot of very good people. And I think that the state of radio isn't very good right across the board. And I think a reason is they lose a lot of very good souls like you, people that could actually make radio that we really need right now, that people really need right now, but you've been rinsed out of the system because you shouldn't be on 24/7. That's not healthy or anything. Even if you're a surgeon, you have to be on quite a lot there. You shouldn't be doing that, making a breakfast radio show. I'm
In
sorry, I don't
hindsight,
need to be
yes.
across everything.
Yeah.
What's wrong with just asking a question or saying, I don't know, what's
Yeah.
happening, what's a conclave?
Yeah.
And finding out what is a conclave. It's fascinating, actually, what's a conclave? It's like a word now I keep saying, because it sounds nice to say it, conclave. So I saw the movie, and then obviously Popey's gone, and they're looking for new Popey. Now, I saw that movie about this, conclave. I'm now sounding intelligent on the radio simply because I saw the movie Conclave. 133 cardinals get locked away.
Really?
Yes. They say pick a winner. Like Survivor, Pope
Wow.
Survivor. Yes. So it's nothing wrong with actually, I think it's healthier to actually be in a place of not knowing. These days we put a lot of emphasis on knowing everything, knowing the answer, being on 24/7. I think it's much more place being in a place of wonder and finding out about something. The answer's boring in life.
I agree. And
In search for the answer to be lived into, that's so much more fun being in the question.
yes.
It's like even right now, actually, I don't need to know what am I going to do with the rest of my life. I'm 52. Why can't I just accept there's a question mark? And then when I own the question mark, all right, there's probably a few different choices. I can do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was good for me because it was my spiritual awakening. In that sense, you know how you have Eckhart Tolle calls it the dark night of the soul.
Yeah, we've all been
where
there.
we've all been there. Some choose to do something with it, others stay in it. And I did, and then I moved on to be a podcast producer and then came up with the idea of my podcast, and the rest is history. But you need that breakfast radio role for you. Waking up at those hours, I remember someone said that's shift work. You're still in those hours.
Shifts are more than a couple of hours, all right? Much as I'd like to sort of go, yes, you're quite right, I'm a shift worker. Shift workers, my mum and dad did that. That's 10, 12 hours,
Yeah.
okay? It's like, I would not sound like other shift workers. I'm
But
very
the
lucky to do
hours,
what
I
do.
think it's what they said
There's
was
wear
the
and tear.
hours.
There are a lot of wear and tears, and you have to reorientate your life around it. But my God, what I get, I've got the best job in the world. I've been doing it 27
and
years.
you've got such
I'm
a good
blessed.
team as well.
They're average, and if you know anyone better, no, I am very lucky. I have a joyous team. I find as much as I love doing the show, there's an equal amount for me of joy in actually being part of a team. That brings me just as much joy as doing the show. I'm very lucky that it's both for me.
Tell me, going back to the panic attacks, so you obviously did the breathing. Was there any other the other tips that the
breathing
guy in the
thing,
shed gave you?
I was skeptical about that. Breathing, oh my God, the breathing isn't going to help me because when it's really bad, it's really bad. And anyone who's been through it, it's horrendous. And that breathing isn't going to help me. And then I remember sort of looking it up, like breathwork, and it was like annoying yoga people. It's like they're not part of my tribe. I'm going to do yoga. Yoga's not going to help me at 5:45 in the morning when there's a producer going, "Where are you?" And I'm hiding in the radio station toilet. I can't be doing downward dog. Is it going to help me? And so I found out that it was a week-long breathwork retreat with this guy. And called the Breath Guru. And straight away I got
Was it
annoyed.
Australia or the UK?
It was a UK guy,
Yeah.
but it was in Spain. So I rang him, and he was a really funny guy. He just made me laugh. And he knew what the preconception was. And this was actually about 12 years ago, I guess, now. So it's way before how big breathwork has become. And so I just took a chance. And I remember telling the kids, I'm going to go for a week in Spain to do a breathwork retreat. And they were like, but you really know how to breathe. And I went, yeah, that is a good point. They're like, what are you going to do? And I went, what am I going to do? A week? I'm going for a week. So that's my wife went, look, just go and find out. She says, it's rubbish, just cancel it and come home. But I loved it. It was great. It was a lot of fun. I felt it changing. I felt I could change what's going on in here, which has been quite intimidating for me, and I felt quite scared by sometimes, because one thing that's awful about sort of anxiety and panic attacks and depression is suddenly your body isn't a safe space for you anymore, and there's nothing more frightening than that. And so suddenly I could feel that I could find safety in myself without glasses of wine or trying to distract myself. I found that I could help myself, and I guess the buzzword at the moment is agency. I found that I could step back into my power, but not in this kind of toxic masculine way, in a very different kind of way, and actually do it quite quickly. And so it still makes a big difference in my life. Although my daughters now, even when I'm like, they're having tough times, and they go, we're not going to be doing breath work. Okay, I'm like, okay. And they go, Dad, before you say anything, is it to do with breath work? And it is actually. I went, no. They've got to find their own way about what things that help them. But is it about breath work? Have you got some essential oils? I went, I have got both. I went, please, no essential oils.
Oh my God, it's so funny you say that. Last night, my daughter, who's 10, she's telling me about something. She actually said this same thing. She goes, Mum, I understand. And she puts the namaste hands, right, with the fingers, and she goes, all is well. All is well.
She's burning you, but also it's true.
So funny.
There's no greater mirrors in life, right, than having kids.
Yeah.
Very early on, at a very young age, they say something that cuts straight through to your nonsense, right, where you go, it's like they've been going, yeah, I'm only 8, but I've been watching you the whole time. They just cut through, and it's like they find this little chink in the arm, and you're, oh, how do you know it was there? Watching you the whole time. Namaste. That's right. Breathe in, breathe out. And I remember once a couple of years ago, I had a group of guys round, and it was just really hard. It was just too much banter, and it just wasn't working. And so, I was defaulting to what I do in those things where I just try and become a clown and make everyone drink more, and I drink more. And one of my daughters was watching it, and I popped out and said hello to her. She goes, "How's that breath work helping you right now?" I was like, just go. Ooh, another bottle of wine. Is that to go with the breath work?
They're so funny, aren't they?
Yes, yeah. Harsh, yes.
And so how do you find it now? Do you feel like, does it come up often now? And also self-talk, was there anything that you learned about what to say to yourself if you feel it coming on?
Oh, yeah, I think that critical inner voice, last year, I did something I'd never done before. I never thought my life would lead me here, but I started to coach people about how to speak, in any situation.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how much I'd loved it. I just loved it. And because speaking is just one of those meta skills where any work you can do on that will improve every single area of your life. But I hadn't realised until I started to help people just that actually speaking isn't just about that external voice. There's just that damaging sort of heckler that you have in your head a lot of the day, and how to be with that is, I think, a challenge for everybody these days. I think it's noisier than ever before because there's so many other people online now who look like they've got the perfect life. And so you can't help but compare yourself to that and realise, and that's a heavily filtered version of a fake reality, really. And the moments there's cut on one of those videos, it's probably at the 30th time they've done it, and that person's probably struggling in some way anyway and needs some neroli oil or box breathing that I'm happy to dispense. And so it's just, that inner critical voice, that's being with that, befriending it, that's going to be, I think that's the work of a lifetime, isn't it? Yeah, it's even a couple of times during this interview, I'm like, are you being funny enough? Are you being interesting enough? And it's like, it's just acknowledging it, I hear, without having to indulge it too much.
It's so true. And one thing someone said to me that helps me a bit if I feel panicky is like, really like centering myself with the breathing and saying like, I am safe. I am safe.
You can never say that enough to yourself.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Honestly.
No, you're right, Sarah. No.
Yeah.
That, if people could take one thing away from our chat, that. Even if you don't do the breath work and save money on very expensive essential oils, saying to yourself a couple of times through the day, I am safe, because actually, we can sort of activate the nervous system and the limbic system and just actually create danger when actually right now you are in no physical danger. And even just knowing that dials it down a couple of notches.
It does. It honestly
you can look
works.
around and go, actually right now in this conversation, I'm not in any danger. And then actually you feel yourself, someone's just centering or dropping in or taking a breath, just going, okay, right. I think I can slow things down a bit.
Yeah. We talked before we started recording about David White, who is an amazing Irish poet who's been on this podcast that you also love. I want to tell you a funny story about the interview I did with him. So he was on the screen because I think he was in America. And he's amazing, as you know. His poems are so moving and meaningful. And so I'm really engaged with this conversation, and he's talking. And suddenly I can feel, I think he was talking about when his mum died, and he's got the most amazing poems around that.
Yeah.
And so I can feel tears coming out of my eyes. And then suddenly they do occasionally do tours around the station, and I see the board. They've taken the board to come have a look. So he's on the screen. I've got tears coming out of my eyes.
Yeah, but that's what those people really need. Emotions, empathy, poetry.
It's very true. So
you showed them what we need more of in boardrooms, actual human emotions.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So I think he's incredible. When did you get into his work?
Gosh, when I first moved to Australia, my wife went on some retreat for a couple of days. I mean, she came back. It was to do with something called the work of Byron Katie.
Yeah, she's been on this podcast.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
And her work is great, very simple again, but actually quite transformative. My wife came back. She was, oh my God, it's amazing. You should go. You should go in a couple months' time. Looked up, there's one in Byron Bay. I thought, okay, yeah, I'll go. And on the first, I was the only guy there. I think there's about 18 women, similar age to me. 99.9% of these women were getting over a relationship with a man. So straight away, there was a lot of, what's he doing here? There was a lot of, what do you call it, projection. Yeah. And I felt really like, I don't know if I can handle this, being some kind of like spokesperson and kicking boy for all of men. All of men? So I was really actually intimidated.
Yeah.
And over the next couple of days, became very close with all of them and had some incredible times in contact with a lot of them still. But anyway, I remember the first sort of opening thing, and I'd never really been on a retreat beforehand. You're sitting on those uncomfortable cushions on the floor in a circle. Like, why can't we be in chairs and heal? Why's it got to be uncomfortable? Life's uncomfortable enough. I don't sit on the floor. I'm not 8. Anyway, I'm sat on the floor and I'm like, back. It's only 5 days. This is it. And she goes, hey, listen, just close our eyes and just going to play something and just receive it. And I was like, here we go. Receive what? And then they played this poem by this Irish guy called David White. I'd never heard any of his work before, hadn't really had poetry in my life. And I found myself within 30 seconds sobbing. And I opened up one of my eyes and I thought, they'll all be sobbing too. They weren't sobbing, and they're all like looking at me like, what is happening with this? What's this guy going on with? And I was shaking. And as we talked afterwards, a lot of them said it was actually very transformative because they had all been going through stuff with what had happened in various relationships with men, their dads or partners. And they said they'd never seen a man cry before.
Really?
Like so quickly. And they found it quite confronting and shocking. They didn't know how to be with it. So we actually had about an hour or two talking about how you're used to men being in a certain range of emotions, angry or disconnected, really. They'd never seen someone do that. And I said, don't find it that easy to cry. And so I don't know what and so I was like, who was that guy talking? I became obsessed with David White. I remember I was like downloading his books on Kindle while I'm on this course, just like consumed, kind of fanboy of David White, going, what is this kind of shamanic power with words? And so it started this kind of deep dive into the work of David White, and I suddenly realized what poetry is about. It's the language of the heart and soul. And suddenly I'm listening to his poetry and his talks, and he's making more sense about life and being human than anyone, even the therapist I had who was great, anyone I've ever been exposed to before. And I was like, oh my God. And so I started reading other poems. Some moved me, some didn't, and started to collect poems. And they helped me come back to myself, back into my heart. And again, like we're talking about breathwork, they're free, widely available. And it made me want to use my words better and my energies in what I do as well. And David's a funny dude as well. He's a really funny guy.
Is he?
Oh, yeah, he's a funny guy. And so I turned 52 years ago, and he does these walking tours a couple of times a year around the country. And so I really wanted to, I was thinking about going back to Ireland. My dad's Irish on his side of the family, going back many generations in Western Ireland. And David was doing a week-long tour, walking and poetry in Western Ireland. So I booked onto it, went over to Ireland by myself, and there were like 35 people on it, and had an incredible week in Ireland, hanging out with David, drinking in pubs with him, chatting to him about life, and he's a very funny storyteller, and it was incredible. Absolutely incredible. I think it renewed my faith in what I do, and what it really left me back in love with the art of a real conversation. And these days, we think we're having conversations with people, even people I work with. They go, yeah, I spoke to that person yesterday. And I go, have you spoken to them, or was it a text message? They go, no, we swapped messages. I went, that's not a conversation. That's a different thing. It's a fake kind of intimacy. I think it's a dying art, actually, a real conversation. And a real conversation doesn't just need to be trauma vomiting. It can be, you can have depth in surface. You can have a very deep connection with someone in 22 seconds in an Uber when you just ask how they are and you actually really listen. You can break someone's heart just by listening to them properly. And so the real highlight for me in Ireland, as much as it was meeting David and hanging out that week in Ireland with him, was actually being in conversation with strangers. And there's this intimacy when we talk to strangers.
It really is.
Oh my God, Sarah, seeing it. I suddenly realised I've been doing this all my life on the radio, both sides of the world. And it hadn't ever really struck me. And of course, I'm going to find it transformative and healing when I'm doing it and those strangers are in front of me. And the great thing about when you go for a walk is, another thing that I found actually incredibly healing was something which I realise now was happening to me through tough times in childhood, was just going for a walk.
Yeah.
Oh my God, if you're stuck up in your
I
head,
agree.
just go for a walk.
Yeah.
10, 20 minutes. You will feel better.
Yeah.
It pays back dividends, I think, more than any other thing. It's just going for a walk. And so being in a walk in beautiful lands, and you're chatting to people about life, and because you're not looking at each other, you're looking at a horizon. And if the conversation gets a bit awkward, you go, I'm just going to tie my shoelace up.
Yeah.
And they go, you haven't got shoelaces, they're slip-ons. Oh, okay. I've got a stitch. You catch up, you go ahead. You can unplug from the conversation. And I think it gave me something I didn't realise that I need as well. And in one of those random conversations, I was chatting to someone who said that they were a performance coach. And I was like, oh, right, and do you have to go to university for that? Are you like a professor? And they were like, who told you that's what a coach does? And I went, so what do you do? And I found myself really lighting me up. And so without that conversation 2 years ago, there's no way I would have started what I did last year, which was coaching. I think it lit something up in Ireland, which is a real gift. You
mentioned earlier that when you initially came here, it wasn't, like anyone wouldn't start on this like number one show. Weren't you supposed to be on Triple M?
Yes, I really was. Yeah,
well, because I remember kind of hearing that.
Yes.
So did you actually sign
Someone who used to work here. Yeah. Someone who used to work here. There was someone else who is still here, flew to London, and we got on really well. He said, I think Triple M would be a great place for you.
I can imagine you on Triple M.
And so I was like, what are you saying? Tradie humour? Blokey?
Yes.
Just say it.
I don't know.
It's written down that notepad. Dumb guy equals Triple M.
Just the sort of like, I don't know. I love Triple M. So yeah, it's a compliment.
Thank you so much. My life's work is to get on Triple M. And so I had the guy flew over who I'd known through the boys, Hamish and Annie. I've known them about 15 years. And he said, Triple M would be a great place for you to start. I was like, okay. And it was kind of similar to the radio station I was working in the UK. And then he said, hey, listen, there's someone else you just need to meet. And I realised that we were both going to be in Amsterdam. I was speaking at a conference on radio. This person was. And we meet in a bar. And this person actually says to me, I don't get it. Don't get you. You would die on your backside in Australia. He goes, every time you would just struggle here. Every time you spoke, half the audience would hate you because you're English. And I didn't know any different. I thought, God, he's probably right. And so I remember getting back from the conference and saying to my wife, I don't think it's going to happen. This is what he said. My wife said, okay, how many people have told you something like that in your life before? And what have you done? If you listened to them, you never even would have started in radio. You wouldn't have got the job in London. You wouldn't have got the next radio station. You've never done that. Why are you going to... You've got to keep... If this is what you've got to get after it like you've done with everything else. What the hell does he know? You always say no one knows anything in your industry. And it's true. I don't. And so I didn't take it and I carried on. And another group who did take a massive chance on me, they gave me a breakfast show. And I said, don't you want me to do an afternoon show, an evening show, and kind of cut my teeth there and get back on breakfast? I went, no, this is what you dedicate your life to. We believe in you. We'll leave you alone. You figure your way out through it. We really think you'll be able to make it work. And so, that's how I ended up here. And thank God I am on that radio station because it's been a great home for me here. And it still is.
And have you ever seen that Triple M guy since?
Of course, yeah. Yeah. And hey, look. We've all made decisions like that. What do we know?
Yeah.
And probably, you know what, it could have gone one or two ways. It was either going to go very well or really badly. That's just a way. You're right. Now, I realise now, I hadn't really appreciated at the time what a seismic difference it was. Having an unknown English guy suddenly rock on the radio show one day, people didn't know who I was or they never heard of me, and you're English.
Yeah.
And it's that thing of like, in the morning, I think we're really guarded about who we let into our life. And so, very quickly, in a very Australian way, they went from not being sure, arms folded, and some people actually just hating the concept of me, to actually really embracing me. And, a year and a half later after getting here, the show went to number one. And so, luckily, it has gone really well. It's now meant that I have a home here. My daughters do. They're both at university here in Melbourne. And so this is home for us. I'll never move back to the UK.
It's funny. I had a different story, but not dissimilar in the sense that ages ago when I was really trying to break into the US market, someone said, an American said to me, in quite a high role, Americans only like Americans.
Right.
And I was like, oh, And then I'm lucky to have a lot of American friends, and they're like, that is absolute crap.
Yeah.
We wouldn't just read an American person's book.
No.
We're going to read a person.
Netflix, Ricky Gervais.
We're going to read
Ricky's
books
got
from
no career
anyone.
in America.
Exactly. And it's funny the things that we actually listen to, this is good advice for anyone listening right now, that just because one person or even two or three say something doesn't mean it's true. That's not always your truth because someone else has said it. And like you, imagine you just gone, okay, I'm not going to make it in Australia because one guy said I won't. And you've got the number one show here from, for many years. Like, we just have to be very careful about
I think we give away our power. I think
exactly.
we all do this. I've done this. We outsource our power.
Yeah.
Because what you really want is you want constant validation.
Yeah.
We all do if we're honest. And when you don't get it, you don't realise it, but it reminds you of rejection from mum, dad, or whatever, a teacher at school. And suddenly you're not hearing it from that person. You're hearing it from some scar or echo in the past. And I think there was some part of me that actually was like, yeah, he's right. And there's always that part of you that isn't sure about what you're doing. It's a critical voice. And sometimes it's actually helpful to know that actually that critical voice is right. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing. I didn't know what I was doing moving to Australia. And actually, I think when you acknowledge that there's a part of you saying you don't know what you're doing, be careful, is go, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. I should be careful here. Obviously, I didn't listen to that. I blew my life up, moved to the other side of the world. It was the most dangerous thing I've done in my life. My poor kids, my poor wife.
It was quite lonely for you when you first arrived.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Do you know anyone?
Didn't know it. I knew Hamish and Andy, but suddenly you're moving a whole family and you don't know anyone. People are always like, so did you have family and friends here? No, no one. And so my wife was making friends very quickly because she does. She's like a human magnet. Yeah. She come back from a jog walk. I've met 3 women. I'm part of a book club. We're going out tonight. And suddenly I remember spending a lot of time alone. Every Friday night I get my phone out going, I'll see if my mates want to meet for a bit. I don't have any mates. They're in the UK. And then suddenly your mid-40s, trying to make friends as a man in your mid-40s is so hard because mid-40s men are usually, they're normally parents, they have friends, they don't have enough time to see their actual friends they've been through since, they've been through a lot of stuff, they have shared experiences. Suddenly there's some wide-eyed Pom who's here on the radio, probably going to get fired within 6 months. No one's asking you out to stuff. And so I hadn't realised how lonely it would be. And I also hadn't realised, how the hell do you make friends in your mid-40s and you're a guy not from a country, and you think about what is maleness, where do people go? They go to the pub or they go to a footy game. It's like, I was such on the outside trying to find my way through that and actually build male friendships from the ground up was incredibly hard. And even the friends that I have back in the UK, if I'm really honest, a lot of them, was like an arranged marriage, that my wife was a friend with their wife.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you just tag along, and you know, it's like, you know, like an arranged play day.
Yeah.
You're there and you go and play in the garden, go and play soccer in the garden with Peter here. Peter. And you form a friendship out of that. And so not having that was, oh my God, it sounds embarrassing, but it was really hard. Yeah, this real loneliness of like, how will I make friends here? I remember thinking, will I ever get any friends here? How actually, well, I've got no friends on the radio. I've got no friends at home. Why did I come here? I should have bought Harley Davidson and had an affair. It would have been easier for everyone.
How did you make friends?
Oh,
I mean, do you have friends now?
I'm almost looking away. I can't even look in the eye. I'm not even looking in the eye. I tell you this. I once asked an Uber driver out. I asked an actual...
Out?
Well, not out like to go out and have sex. I went out if he wanted to meet for a beer, and he just looked.
Do you get along with him?
We got on really well.
Yeah.
Really well. And great chemistry.
What was the distance?
My wife was in the car. My wife
was
texts me in the car and goes, get his phone number. And I'm like, okay, you get out of the car. Please don't make it weird. She gets out of the car and I go, hey, you know what? We're getting on well. Would you like to go out for a beer? And he just looked confused. He actually adjusted the rearview mirror, and that's when you're like, I'm just going to dive out the car now and just end myself. He goes, what? And I go, would you like to go out for a beer? And he goes, okay. So we changed phone numbers, and I texted him a couple of hours later. My wife was like, text him like in the next couple of hours. You don't want to be too keen. It's like, you know, you don't want to be too keen. But I did, and to this day, I've never heard from that guy. I remember thinking, I'm at a low point right now. I can't make friends with an Uber driver. And then it was like my hairdresser I became friends with. It was just a long, lonely road of building up. How do you two know each other? He cuts my hair. They're like, what? Is that a joke? No, it's just my hairdresser. Anywho.
But you have friends now.
Yes. You sound like concerned there. You do have friends now. Is there anyone here who'd like to be my friend? If you're listening and you'd like to be Christian's friend,
Please write in.
Slide into my DMs.
Now, I have to ask you about something, and it's not as funny. I think it was either the start of this year, last year, a story exploded about you and your wife breaking up.
God, that's a gear change.
It's a massive gear change.
Yeah, I'm now
I really had no one.
I'm now in a gay relationship with my hairdresser. We're very happy together. Yes.
So how did that even start? Like,
yeah, great question.
Maybe it
I'm
was
still
the
wondering.
driver.
I'm still wondering. So you're quite right. There was something on I didn't even know that I had one, but there's a Facebook fan page.
Yeah.
And about me and the radio show.
Yes.
And it's mainly run by really kind people who used to listen to me in the UK. And I'd simply been off for a couple of days sick. That's all it was. I'd been off sick. And my youngest daughter, who just moved away to go to university, rang at 11:30 on Friday night. And because the phone goes at 11:30 on Friday night, it's one of your kids.
Yeah, of course.
We thought she was in love. We're like, is everything okay? She was like, no, it's not okay. One of my friends who I used to go to school with, who lives in Holland, has seen a Facebook post and said that you and Mum are breaking up. Why haven't you said anything to us? And we were like, I was laughing because I was like, I knew it'd just be some crazy rumor. My wife is so upset. We've never had anything like this before. And, 2 weeks' time, we're 27 years being married. And there's no truth in it at all. And so, but it's very hard because when you say that, and people in my job, they just presume that I've been sleeping around. And so this day, people are still like,
really?
Is everything okay? No, they do. You just, I've got to be honest, when you read it, you think, what's going on?
Yeah.
We just do. I do the same. My wife was really
Where
upset.
there's smoke, there's fire.
Stop
that kind
saying
of
that.
thing.
That's another podcast title for you.
Yeah.
And so it was my wife was really upset by it. Like, really upset by it.
Of course.
And so I go back on air Monday and I talk about it and go, of course, the more that someone like me says everything's fine, people are saying, going, bloody hell, I didn't see that thing. It's just the thing on Facebook. He's making a big deal about it.
Yeah.
And I just said, this is how rumours start. My wife's really upset. Everything is, as much as it can be fine in a long-term marriage, you're going to have disagreements, but we're not breaking up. I love my wife. I wouldn't be who I am today and have this life here without this incredible, strong, she's the rock in our relationship. That makes me the role, but my wife is she's the head of the family.
Yes.
She just is. And so there's no me without my wife. And so I thought it was funny because I could see there's no truth in this. But my wife, I think she felt like she didn't want our sacredness of our relationship being a source of gossip.
Yeah.
We
I
used to gossip
get
about
that.
me, he's getting fired, or the ratings, whatever. That comes with the job. I understand that. It's not nice, but I understand that. However, this felt something like really different. It was hard for me to see my wife generally upset. I think she really cared about what her female friends thought about her and her
course.
marriage. And so I hadn't really thought about that. And so, she found it, and then it became the Herald Sun is a massive newspaper. Then it got into the newspaper, and the story was DJ slams rumors about marriage. And again, DJ slams rumors. I didn't do any slamming. I'm not a slammer.
Yeah.
Just about me saying, and all I'd done really is take the mickey out of this crazy rumor for a Facebook fan page and say, "There's nothing in this. My wife's really upset. We're all good-ish." And so
Can we just go back to the DJ part, though?
Yes.
You're hardly a DJ.
What
You're
would
not
you
at the
call me?
nightclubs.
No, exactly.
I
know.
Like with the...
It made me sound like a 30-year-old, like a mix master on the wheels of steel, turntables. And so it was like slams marriage rumors, made it feel like it just added an even bigger thing. Now it's in the newspaper. And then she was getting bombarded with messages from her friends, screenshot going, "Is everything okay?" And some of those friends... You know how they are? It's that tinge of, is everything okay?
Yeah.
Oh, good. They're getting some shit in their glorious, successful
That's
life.
awful.
And it's horrible. And there was a tone in some of them, not all of them. I'm sure we're imagining it. But it was just really hard for my wife to suddenly see it in the newspaper. And then it became an even bigger thing. It really was a non-story. But the more you say that, or the more you get emotional about it, the more it looks like, shit, they must be having some problems at the moment. And I've never, ever had to talk about or anything like that. And so... Even now, I guess I kind of like still confused by it. It's like a nothingness to me. But when I leave here, my wife would go, "How was the chat?" And she asked us about the marriage stuff. She's like, "She'd be so upset."
Oh, no, don't
She's
say
another
anything.
Sarah. You do not mess with Sarahs. You do not mess with
No,
Sarahs.
but more so in the sense that it's upsetting that people can say things that are completely not true. And then the media, look at Amanda Knox. You asked me how the Amanda Knox interview was, right?
Yeah.
And that was the episode that just came out. The media made her seem like the most horrible sex villain so far from
had a
anything
narrative.
that she was, right? And it upsets me that the media can do this. And of course that person should never have written that silly thing. When you're talking, I'm thinking about, what happened with people in my space like Jay Shetty and Andrew Huberman, and they said nothing.
Yeah.
None of them have. I think Andrew on Diary of a CEO spoke about it. But really, they just went into, we're going to ignore this. And both of them are even bigger than what they were before, right? So I wonder, what the fine line is between just ignoring it like it never happened and then actually speaking about it to put the fire out. And for you, it's different because it was completely a rumor. I think with them, could be some truth involved in it.
Yeah, but we live in a world where now it's a post-fact world, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, it's a rumor. And so for me, it was like, I wanted to say something because actually that radio show to me is never been just a radio show.
Yeah.
It's a constant ongoing conversation about my life and the listeners' lives. And so if something like this happens, of course you want to share. It's like I share my life with them. And I expect them to share their lives with me.
Yeah.
And so this strange things happened that weekend that's both funny but also really hurtful to my wife. She's really upset.
Yeah.
And so for me, the way to deal with that is through humour. I can make the point but also make comedy out of it. And that's one of the most joyous things in the world to me. So I can do both. I can make the point without feeling like I'm suddenly being very pious and serious and like, woe is me, we're victims here, when we're not. We're really not.
Yeah.
But I can also do it with humour, and humour is still the best way, and telling you the truth of getting connection. And actually, I think, do you know what? I think it reminded people. I've got a lot of lovely emails from listeners that actually, you're still a real person. I'm still a real person. Yeah, I'm funny, and you probably think because I can be funny 3 hours a day that I have some sort of mastery over my life. I just don't. And something like this was really, really upsetting. Now the kids are constantly making jokes about it in the group chat. It's like the latest ratings came out last week.
What happened with the ratings?
The ratings came out last week. And I told the kids, hey, it show's still number one. My 18-year-old daughter just goes, radio host soars to number one, puts awful marriage speculation behind him. And
They're so good, the kids.
I'm like, oh my God, at least we've done one thing right. We've raised funny kids. We need funny kids in the world.
It's so true, though.
Yeah,
You
it
know?
is. It will help them in their life as well, having a sense of humour about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I wonder, Christian, what is some of the best advice that you have ever been given?
Gosh, what a beautiful big question. I think the best advice we get in life is something that stays with you throughout your whole life. And it's stuff that you might accumulate. Like, you're probably like me, I'm guessing, Sarah, that you have an open note on your phone where you collect quotes and poems. I do. Right. I'm
Sometimes
always,
I don't even know what they are.
No,
like,
nor
I've
do
just
I.
written all these random lines.
Yeah, just random
Yeah,
stuff.
sometimes numbers.
Yeah,
Like,
anything, you know. And so I do collect a lot of these things. I never look at them, but I think there are certain ones that really actually do stay with you, because there's some. I think maybe it's an ancient primal part of you that knows there's some sort of eternal truth about it. And I think it was a point last year running my team, and I've always managed my radio show teams. I suddenly realized that actually the number one thing I needed to be as a leader in that team was actually to make that environment safe. And if you ask any of my team, I'm not a shouter. No one's ever felt threatened in anything, but it doesn't mean that people can't feel unsafe sometimes around you. And so it was just important. And then I really realized, what do I need from this team? It's safety. And one thing I'm very bad at is asking people for help. Then what happens is I will then go, I'm all alone. You know, at the door to be Shrek, I'm all alone. And have you asked anyone for help? No. You know, you can do that. I have this kind of Superman complex where I've got to do it all myself. Don't be a burden. It's a very Irish thing. Irish people feel very bad about becoming a burden to anybody. And so it's a terrible thing to grow up with this kind of Catholic guilt that you meant to be sort of flagellating yourself through life. If you're not struggling and it's not painful, you're not doing it right. And so one of the biggest learnings for me in the last 12 months, I still find it hard at times, is to tell the team if I am struggling. And I don't mean struggling like I can't do it today. I actually just mean like we had a tough day yesterday. One of our daughters going through a tough thing. And so even just saying that, that's a big thing for me. It might not sound it, but it really is in the team environment when I want to be seen as a calm, collected leader. So I think the thing about safety, and actually when you give it to other people, actually the hardest person to give it to most of the time is yourself. And so that's been I wish I'd learned it earlier in life about safety. And it's still now, when my wife is struggling and my daughters, the number one thing is they don't want answers. They want to feel safe in their experience with you, that you're not going to jump in to fix them or start talking about breathwork or go, let me just get my David White collection of poems. I've got one here for you. Start close in. They need something else. They just need to come back to come back home. That's one that I keep coming back to a lot, actually, is that coming home to ourselves. And it's very true in my life at the moment with my sort of almost 21-year-old daughter who's trying to, those two beautiful questions we have, I think, throughout life. How do I find out who I am? And how do I know what to do with my life? And they're two really beautiful questions. I'm not sure we're meant to really fully answer them with a full stop. I think it's meant to be just a question mark to actually be in that question. And so I'm with her at the moment talking a lot about this and kind of walking alongside her, both emotionally, but also I think actually going for walks with her. And, you know, we're talking a lot about this stuff. And actually it's about how do we come back to who we really are. That.
Beautiful.
And that's every day, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's this conversation for me. You've lit me up, right? And I came in today with like, when I go on these kinds of podcasts where people come to it and they want answers, I can get quite intimidated. Going, I don't know, what on earth? This show is called A Life of Greatness. One of the team laughed the other week when I've been invited on this podcast. It's called Life of Greatness. They went, really? I went, what do you mean, really? Do I not embody greatness? And so actually when I came in here, I was like, what have I got of any advice? I feel a hot mess every day. Aww. And so it's like, what have I got to share? But then I'm like, well, share that. Own that. We're all a mess, you know, and so sometimes it's about trying to find magic in the mess. That's been a big thing for me the last couple of years. I thought that I needed to be some hyper, you know, there's all this stuff at the moment, isn't there, about human optimization. It's the Tim Ferriss effect. Human optimization.
It's like a robot.
Yeah, it is. 10x your life.
Oh, God,
Grant
Cardone.
All that stuff. Yeah, it's so exhausting. Yeah. I want an unoptimized life. I'm a gloriously messy, unoptimized human being. If you saw my office at home, it's a shit heap. There's random crazy post-it notes everywhere. But it works for me. I'm all right with it. And so I think it's helpful for me knowing giving voice to the mess helps bring it, hopefully, and making it into some kind of magic as well. I spent a long time trying to think that I need to make myself invincible, strong, and that would bring me safety in life. But actually, the effort of doing that actually creates the conditions of anxiety and misery for me. So my thing is I think it's about coming home to yourself as well. And there are a couple of things that actually I have remembered, that my 2 tattoos here are things where I've gone, I really
What's the
need
sword?
This is a sword. That there are 4 different things with this that I had done just at the end of last year.
Yeah.
That were really, really important to me. This I got done after the panic attacks, actually, when I was getting ready to leave therapy, which can be quite. No one ever talks about leaving a therapist. It's a really scary thing.
Clearly,
actually.
yours was upset.
Yeah, he's stood in that
Spat
shed
his
waiting for me.
coffee
Doesn't know I've moved to Australia. And
So what does it mean?
he said one day to me when I was talking about how hard I found it to accept that I was flawed. And then I remember one session, he turned up with a black eye. That he'd obviously been attacked. I said, "Oh my God, Peter, you're right." He was like in his 60s. He went, "I've been in a fight." And I went, "What do you mean a fight?" He goes, "Road rage." I went, "Someone hit?" He goes, No, I hit someone." Then it all kicked off.
Shit.
And I went, "I thought you meant to be better than me." He goes, "Dude, who told you that?" He goes, I'm just as fucked up as you are, just maybe a bit further down the line. I went, "You are?" And so it changed our relationship.
Yeah.
To this day, I'm not sure if he ever actually did get in that road rage or whether he's such a good therapist. He just punched himself in the eye going, this guy needs a new lesson to accept what it is to be human. It's not about being flawed. It's accepting and actually giving compassion and love to all that you are. Anyway, when he was telling me the lesson of accepting your flaws and not seeing them as flaws, just seeing them as part of the beautiful fullness, wholeness of who you are, he said this thing. He goes, "You love your music. You know, there's a line in a song by Leonard Cohen, right? My mum loves Leonard Cohen." I went, "I'm not really a fan of old miserable Leonard Cohen." He goes, "Well, you'll like this." He goes, there's a chink in everyone. That's where the light comes in. And it's a beautiful quote, and it made me cry. And so I thought, I need to remember that word light, that's where the light comes in. And my job is to lighten people up in the morning. And so I do that by talking about the mess of my life, not being able to make friends when I moved in. So it was something that I wanted to remember really quickly. And in any situation, sometimes when I first moved here, when things were tough, I would just feel myself just putting it on top of that, going, let's let the light in. And even sometimes just lighten it all up. It's going to be okay. Even if they fire you and you move back to the UK, you will still be okay. You'll still have your family. You know, you'll still have love. And
That's
so
beautiful.
that's a really important thing. But it's the word light in Sanskrit written in a circle because I didn't want anyone else knowing what it meant. So wherever I go, people go, "What does that mean?" And so I will make something up depending on the situation.
Really?
Yes, yeah. My dad still doesn't know what.
There's a Rumi quote: "The wound is where the light enters you."
Yes, and I love that.
Yeah.
It's about just accepting what it is to be fully human. And actually, we think it's the shiny, successful parts of us that the world are interested in. And it's taken me way too long to realise those other bits, that's the gift. The wound, actually, I would say for me, that I spent too long trying to defend, hide, build on, concrete over this kind of a wound in me. I've realised that actually that is my way into the world and connection for me.
And authenticity, like in the work that I do, again, in a whole chapter in my book, is the biggest thing
How many
that you can
chapters
offer.
are in this book? Feels like you're intimidating me. I'm starting to write a book at the moment. Feels like I've got 57,000 chapters in it. Everything you're going on is a chapter in my book. And Christian, I'm going to say goodbye to you now. That's another chapter in my book. I'm going to have a glass of water. That's my next book. It's called That Glass of Water.
There's a chapter about authenticity because it is actually the biggest theme. Like when people say to me, it's a question when I do a lot of keynotes, what's the biggest takeaway that you've had from people on the podcast? And a lot of it goes back to being your authentic self.
Now, tell
and
me
that's
what
with
that
wounds.
That word gets used all the time, right? The A word, authenticity. What does it mean to you?
It means just being you. You know, authentically you. And
But sometimes that can mean, like, sometimes when I get up in the morning, I don't want to go and do the radio show, right?
Yeah.
So authentically being means, though, I'll stay at home. No, I just go back to bed. I'm being so authentic right now. Now, my bank are going to be very authentic and say, this carries on, you can't pay the mortgage, we're kicking out your house.
Obviously, you have smarts about you, but I think the idea is that...
So it's smart authentic. I'm going to write a rival chapter to yours. In fact, I'm going to read your whole book and write a rival chapter to each one. And in fact, I'm going to call it A Life of Ungreatness.
Suddenly Christian starts a podcast. A
The
life of ungreatness.
I'm going to do it in a studio just across the road here from you. Sorry.
Who would you have on?
I tell you what I do. I have every
Most
single
unhappy
person you
people.
get. No, then afterwards I go, come and have a chat with me. And go, now tell me the truth. Tell me about all the manky bits, right? Tell me about all the mess. You showed Sarah all the successes. Now tell me about the other ones, the flaws, the stumbles, that.
I think the idea is that, and this goes a lot to like Ronnie Ware's work, who's like the 5 regrets of the dying, that you don't need to live your life trying to like, you know, being what other people want you to be, right? So like, for example, her example is being a palliative care worker. This lady was dying and she said, look, Bronnie, my whole life I just did whatever my husband wanted me to do. And ironically, he had died of lung cancer because he smoked. So the whole time she was inhaling all this smoke. And then she ended up dying of lung cancer as well, right? And she's like, she's like, I wish I had been my true self. And I think that's it, like following your dreams, right?
Yes.
You wanted to do radio, you loved comedy, like those are being your authentic self is going to get you further in life, right?
Yeah, it's hard for people though, isn't it? Because I'm sure everyone listening to this would love to be living their authentic life.
Yeah.
And it's actually really hard. You know, my story isn't normal. It isn't. It's not everybody's. And so that doesn't mean that they don't have gifts. They don't have worthiness in life where they, you know, want more joy and meaning in their life. And so, yeah, I think authenticity is one of those words. I understand everything you're saying, and I get it. I think it's really hard for people to understand what that really means for them. How do they embody that? And I think to me, authenticity is, it's not an end destination. A lot of people think it's like, oh, I'm authentic now. It's like, it's never ending. It's constantly uncovering more of yourself, actually. And that's still my work as a dad, is uncovering more of myself as a dad and as a partner to my wife, who I don't know if you know has left me during this podcast. I'm looking for friends and looking for a second wife. And also being on the radio as well. It's about uncovering more. And I think that's what it is. Our jobs in life is to find more and more, allow more and more of ourselves. Last year was, and I'll be doing more of it this year, is helping people find their voice, which is what the coaching was. It's there's so much stuff about people finding their writing voice, and yet there's very little actually about your speaking voice. And it's normally just about public speaking, which is the tip of the iceberg. That's not everyone's experience. For some people, trying to find their voice means on a Zoom call, asking that thing where people go, any questions, and they're like, I can't, and they freeze. It's like, what happens? Why are you freezing in those situations? But for me, finding our voices, our speaking voice, which is the number one way we find our way in the world, is actually, it's more about allowing. And everything you said about that story, it's about people living a half life where I think the first half of our life is we're like putting on these masks. I think you need to actually get out of childhood.
Yeah.
Life's really hard.
I was going to say, childhood, you just want to be like everyone else.
And they're still in your 20s and 30s. There's a role for those.
Yeah.
There really are. And then I think in the second half of your life, I think actually it's about taking some of them off. And
I
actually
agree.
defending that part of you that's been under that mask where you're worried about showing up. It took me a long time to pluck up the courage to get into coaching last year, to actually allow myself to say to people, I can help, and I prefer the word mentor. Coach feels like, some sort of super coach, and I can optimize your speaking, 10x your speaking. And was like, I don't know about that, but I can mentor you and help you a bit in it. There's a lot I've learned over 27 years and still am about speaking and how we connect, which has really lit me up over the last year.
What's something that you wish for yourself?
Kindness. Yeah. I think sometimes, I'm speaking to myself here, Sarah, sometimes I can be my own worst critic and bully. And it's a horrible thing to actually say that, but I think that's true for a lot of people. And people go, but you've got on paper, I've lived a life, I wouldn't say of greatness, of mild greatness, mildness and greatness, but I've lived a life that actually, it's a successful life. I've got to find work in the world that I love doing and the world likes me doing as well. And I've been rewarded for that. But I think it's sometimes in any given day, I've been quite mean to myself, and it's that thing of like, you should be this, or you shouldn't be feeling that. And so I think actually that word, we talked about safety earlier. I think it comes from being kind to yourself as well. Yeah. It's such a, you look at like the old TV shows like Sesame Street. I remember watching them again when my girls were younger, and they're actually about this thing at the core of most of those episodes. It's a simple act of kindness. And as you get a bit
so beautiful,
older,
Sesame Street.
you realise it's an old-fashioned thing, kindness, but probably number one most important thing on a day-to-day is actually asking yourself at the start of the day, remind yourself, just be kind to yourself and others today. And then at the end of the day, going, how kind was I to myself? And I actually think kindness is linked to another word, which is generous. It's about, we're so easy to snap at other people or go, my God, my coffee's cold. It's actually just to be generous, going, they're just doing their best today.
Yeah, I know.
Rather than they've really gone out of their way today to ruin my life. God damn it.
It's so true, though. I think that sometimes when we're caught up in life and we're trying to do the best, that sometimes people that work alongside of us, or we can get really in the like, that's not right,
No, totally.
and you have to kind of step back going, they're doing the best they can.
Yeah, and you're doing the best you can as well. You care about what you do. I can tell that. Yeah, you've done acres of research. No, you have.
I know.
I bet that I would say is, if I was coaching, I'd go, you don't need to do hardly any of that. You don't.
But it's good because you just know it,
So is it your safety blanket?
Yes,
Right,
absolutely.
okay. So what would happen if you hadn't done it? There's no way you're not going to have any questions for me.
I'd have questions, but they wouldn't hit the depth of what I would like to, because I wouldn't.
You don't strike me as a shallow person.
No,
you
I'm
have
not.
big thoughts.
I'm not, but I like doing a lot of research about people because then I get to know the ins and outs of their life. So I just it's for knowledge, right? When I've put this podcast together, I've never made my producers do my research for me. I like to do it myself because I honestly really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I like knowing everything there is about the person. So then I can sit here and not look at my notes once.
Yeah.
But because I remember everything I've written, but just in case,
Yeah.
you got really boring and I forgot what to say and I looked
you've
down.
already written down there.
No.
Boring man. But then don't you think
Clearly
then
that
you're
never
not being
happened.
fully present in what we're talking about? You have been very fully
Yes.
present. But actually, I think then because it's like half your brain is actually trying to remember your notes, ask them about X, Y, Z. And the other half, only half of you is fully here right now. And in these podcasts, and what you do very well is you help surface wisdom out of people. What are their life lessons? And that is something which happens in the moment. Knowledge is something that's happened before. Tell me about that. Often what happens a lot on podcasts and interviews, and I've done this as a lot, where you're asking people and they tell you a story. They've told a lot. They're not living it again. And it's when they live it again that I think that I love hearing somebody talk about a story. And I know I've done it today, talk about things that I've talked about a couple of times on podcasts, but I've found a new level of understanding for it. And a couple of times I felt my voice crack a bit, like, oh my God, I've talked this before, but it's hitting me in a different way today. And so that's what you've done very well. But I reckon if you did half your preparation, I wonder what would happen.
Yeah.
No, my invitation would be to actually experiment. I wonder what it would be.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I don't do as much for some people as others.
Because you don't like them.
Just I might not have had the time
Because
or
actually, now I
something like
look at
that.
those so-called notes. It's a shopping list. It just says milk, tea bags.
And our final question, Christian, what is a life of greatness to you?
You're asking the wrong person, I've told you. There's no greatness here. There's messiness. A life of greatness is a life of messiness. I can agree about a life of messiness and a life of stumbling. I can't say anything to
But
greatness.
that's your life of greatness is a life of messiness. That's a good answer.
Did I say that? I stumbled into it. No, I'd go with that then.
Christian O'Connell, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on this podcast.
It's been a deep joy talking to you.
I've truly enjoyed the conversation
I hope so, me
much.
too.
Thank you.
Thank you.